Paddy, nice talking to you. And as mentioned to you, Virat is going through a bit of difficult times, not in terms of himself, but of course, three test matches don't make a big difference in a career like Virat. I'm sure. How is he mentally right now after the test series against New Zealand? And if you could give me your inputs. Of course, you don't need to go into too much of a specifics, but yes, of course, yeah, I'll let you talk.
I mean, let's face the reality is to lose 3-0 against New Zealand in India, just from a team perspective, that obviously is going to be a bit of a blow to the morale. Virat not scoring runs and particularly getting run out in the last test. That's not nice for anybody, and that doesn't leave them in a great space. But on the positive side, going to Australia, it's a very tough tour. It's a very tough opposition. Virat is someone who he plays his best cricket in the highest pressure situations. We saw that early in the year. Didn't score many runs at the T20 World Cup in the lead up to the final, but when it came to the final, he stood up and he delivered. So Australia does provide that opportunity with a tough opposition away in Australia, 5-match test series. So there's a lot of time to really get into the series. So that plays into a player like Virat's hands. And although he hasn't done that well recently and he didn't have a good series against New Zealand, what I can tell you is that it hasn't affected him. He still is feeling very good about himself. He's feeling very good about his game. He's feeling very confident. Virat had great preparation. He was in a good mindset, but it didn't translate into results. And that's really not something to worry about. It's when someone doesn't have a good mindset and it translates into not scoring results, then there's a whole lot more work to do. But Virat's well poised to have a very good series.
How is he mentally prepared now? Did he go through some sessions now? And is he ready for the challenge? If you could also, and what do you expect it from your perspective? Because obviously you have dealt with him for many years. So how do you think he will respond to the challenge in Australia?
Australia, as I said, it's in the Border Gavaskar series. It's an iconic series. It's two of the strongest teams in the world. Both teams always, it tends to bring the best out of both teams. There'll be a real fight, particularly in Australia, particularly starting in Perth with a very bouncy wicket. So Virat has always been someone who spearheads the aggressive, the attacking approach against the Australians. He's very up for that. He's very ready for it. He is so experienced. He knows what it is to play against Australia. He knows what it is to play a Border Gavaskar trophy. He's up, he's ready, and while that doesn't guarantee success, it certainly sets up with the best possible chance of him leading certainly the batting attack going into a big series.
There's so much criticism which is just for one series, not scoring, and talking about his past. Obviously, he also had a similar situation 2 years ago when he came back stronger in the T20 World Cup. He's gone through something very similar. Does it affect him actually? How strong is he mentally, Paddy, just to get into his mindset?
I think I'm stating the obvious here. We know that Virat is mentally one of the strongest cricketers in the game, but even the best in the world have bad patches. They have low patches. It's certainly not a low patch in terms of his mental attitude. It's not a low patch in terms of his preparation. So I'm certainly not worried. And I think, the Indian fans don't need to worry. The fact that he didn't have a good series, that doesn't mean anything for the next series. In fact, if anything, one of the things that the Indian cricketers have always, since I've known them, since I've been involved nearly 20 years, they play their best cricket when they're coming from behind, when they're on the back foot, when they've been wounded. They are like wounded tigers, and they're probably most dangerous now going to the series, having come off, that rather embarrassing and uncomfortable loss against New Zealand. They will be pitching up. Every one of them will be more hungry than they would normally be given what's just passed. So for most people, failure leaves them with a low confidence. For the Indian cricketers, generally failure makes them so hungry to redeem themselves.
What do you think this series will pan out? Because even Australia is coming back after a series loss against Pakistan, though it is a one-day series, it's a different ball game, but still losing at home. And the previous time when India visited, India has won the series. So vis-a-vis in that context, how do you see that series panning out?
So, it's really interesting because both teams are going into it. They're not taking confidence from recent series. So they're both on a similar footing. It's always advantage Australia when you're playing in Australia, just like it's generally advantage India when playing in India. But we're seeing more and more these upsets where teams are beating India and India. India, the last series, they beat Australia in Australia, which is a hell of an accomplishment. So it's becoming more and more difficult to call what's going to happen. And very often, one of the things we don't see it also boils down to how mentally fresh versus mentally tired are players. And in order to understand that, you need to go back sort of 6 to 9 months and look at how much cricket have they played, what's gone on for them. The team that's played the most cricket and that's been on the road the longest will tend to be at a disadvantage because they don't have their mental, emotional batteries fully charged. And one thing I can say, playing a 5 match test series in Australia, you need to be arriving with your batteries, mental, emotional batteries fully charged, and you need to be finding ways to constantly top them up because it's an incredibly dueling, arduous, tough, and draining series to go through.
Kohli has arrived in Perth early in preparation. How much it talks about him as a professional, and you can shed a little about him and the mindset that he is in.
In the time that I've known Virat, which is, since about 2009 and worked with him, very closely and personally in the last good few years, I have never worked with a cricketer who is more professional, who is more diligent in their preparation, someone who goes more of an extra mile than what Virat does. The team practices hard, Virat always does more. The team trains hard in the gym, Virat always does more. The team has dietary advice, Virat always goes and does more. So whatever he does what the most professional cricket in India and probably in the world does, and he always looks to see in every aspect of his game, where can I do even more so I can take the confidence going into the series, knowing I am more prepared than any other player going into it. And Virat going early, again, it's just bears testimony to the professionalism. And even though he's, deep into his career, he certainly hasn't backed off on any of that.
Nice talking to you, Paddy. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
All the very best. Take care. Yeah.